What's going on, folks? Welcome again to another episode of Reflecting Him, where we here at Blueprints for Living Ministries believe that our greatest duty and our highest honor is to reflect God's image outside of Eden. So let me just off the rip confess something. You ever feel? Actually, I'm going to confess it with asking you a question. You ever feel like sometimes you don't know whether you're coming or going? Like maybe sometimes all the hard work you're doing, you feel like you're not really getting anywhere. You feel like, for what? Or as we would say in the penitentiary, man, I'm just dry staying out of trouble. I'm just dry doing good, right? And nothing seems to really be going my way. If you've ever, if you can share with that sentiment that this episode, I promise you, is for you. Not because I'm just falling apart and oh my God, what am I gonna do with my life? What's going on? I don't know if I'm coming or going. It's not really that. It's there are these moments, and I think it's fitting because we're changing seasons now, right? Fall is right around the corner. I think the first day of fall is September 21st, 23rd, or something like that. So the seasons are changing. And for me, every time a season changes, it prompts me to think about the seasons that we go through in our lives. Maybe sometimes you are tempted to believe based on a certain theological bent that you've adhered to that you're just supposed to always be happy. You're supposed to always, peaches and cream, rainbows in the sky, like nothing's ever supposed to go wrong. Like God always wants you happy. God always wants you healthy and whole and rich. And yeah, okay, whatever. That if that's you, then cool, man. I hope that you never get sick, and I hope that maybe you never die because sickness and death don't belong to you, right? You're gonna name and claim that none of that is ever gonna come towards you, contrary to human nature. I'm being facetious now, guys. Don't get all bent out of shape and offended with me. But listen, if you think that maybe you've plateaued, right? And you feel like you're not really going anywhere, then this episode is for you. I feel like maybe sometimes, me personally, I'm not really going anywhere. My perceptions of ministry, my perceptions of outreach, change. And in fact, they ebb and they flow with the seasons that I go through in my life. As I mentioned earlier, fall's going to kick in next week, and it's prompted me to think about my personal seasonal changes and to express them in this episode for you viewers out there, because I want you guys to think that the season that you go through could be transitions, or they could just be a part and parcel of life, right? Sometimes you're not always going to transition. So let's not confuse seasons with transitions. Transitions are necessary for you and I to develop strength, maturity, growth, kick it up to the next level, that type of stuff. But what I want to focus on are seasons. Seasons, like for example, spring, summer, fall, and winter. They're set. We can expect them. We know we've got, like me personally, I've got so much clothes. Penny, my wife, mocks me. She thinks that I have more clothes and more shoes than a girl, and I might, but hey, it's what I do, man. I like the style, right? I like to have shoes and clothes that match and whatnot. But for example, during summer, all of my sweaters and my jackets, I have so many, I put them away. And I kick out my spring and my summer shorts and the attire that goes with warm and hot weather, and vice versa. When it's winter, I bring out all my winter attire and put up my summer attire. So it's like clockwork. I can expect for a certain part of the year where I'm going to bring out warm clothing, or a certain part of the other year where I'm going to bring out cool clothing. I can expect this. I know what's coming. Seasons are like that, man. You can expect them to happen in your life, so you shouldn't really be shocked when you go through seasons. And I'm sharing this with you in this episode to encourage you, to motivate you, and to remind you that if you're in a season of change, if you're in a season of you've plateaued, if maybe you feel like you're not going anywhere, because trust me, I know exactly what that feels like. If you're in those type of seasons, you're not alone. Everybody goes through them. The challenge forever, however, for you during this season is to reject the idea that you did all that good work for nothing. Am I talking to somebody? Look, I know I'm talking to me. Don't believe for a minute that the visions that God has given you, the hope and the aspirations, the goals, everything you set out to accomplish. You went to school, you got off drugs, you went to that program, you graduated, you got that certificate, like whatever you did, man, kudos. Look, great, because I've got my own accomplishment. As you can see, I've got some things there in the back, right? I've got quite a few accomplishments, and I'm going to graduate with my bachelor's in a couple of months, and I'm going to add to that resume up there on the wall behind me. But what happens when all of your diplomas and your certificates and your degrees and all the accomplishments, all the cool and great things that you set out to do to become somebody, to go somewhere, what happens when none of that pans out? What do? Do you go back? Do you revert? Do you return to what's familiar? One of the things, rather, some of the things that I used to love to talk to the guys about at the Kyle unit were how easy it is for us to revert back to lifestyles and habits when things don't go our way. In fact, drug addiction, drug abuse, drug use is nothing more basic than an attempt to cope with failure, to cope with discontent, to deal with life when it doesn't give you what you want. Well, you feel bad, you feel low, so what do? You pop the pill, you smoke that joint, you hit that line, you drink that drink, you do whatever you do to make yourself feel better. But the reality is it's an escape. You're running from the fact that it's a season. If you're listening to this episode, if you're listening to this clip, if what you've set out to do isn't happening, trust me, guy, trust me, girl, it's not because that's not meant for you. It's not because you're not supposed to. And again, everything, there's a context for your vision and your goals, and there's a context for that. So keep it in this context as I express myself here in this episode. Don't think that because things aren't going the way you plan them to go, you're not supposed to go. Let me say that again. Don't think that because things didn't plan to go the way you wanted them to go, doesn't mean you're not supposed to go. Sometimes, and I'm learning this painfully and intimately about myself, sometimes you make a lot of mistakes and don't know how to rectify them, don't know what to do with them. That's okay. Don't lose hope. Don't give up. Keep going. If you believe in this season that you're in, that maybe, I don't know, you just did it all for nothing. Maybe you just felt like, man, I just dry did good. I just dry did this. I just dry did that. Which for those of you who are uninitiated into the prison talk, into the lingo of prison, to just dry do something is like, man, I just did it for nothing. Right? That's not true. Sobriety, transformation, positivity, all the good things that God has designed for you to pursue are always for a reason. Now, we may not necessarily achieve and accomplish the things that we want exactly the way we envision them to happen. It doesn't mean that our change is futile. It doesn't mean that you just got out there for nothing. Look, if you were a drug addict and you were no longer using and abusing drugs, but you're working at McDonald's, that's awesome, man. Kudos to you. Because it's better to live an honest life and barely make it than live a high life and risk it all. Don't think that because things aren't where you want them to be doesn't mean you're not where you're supposed to be. Because the seasons in our life are literally designed to teach us that God is working, God is moving, but you have to be able to, you got to be able to go with it. You got to be able to have the spring, the summer, the fall, the winter. You got to be able to, as I mentioned earlier about my clothing situation here at the house, you got to be able to expect it. And when you hit that season, man, pull out the tools that are necessary to endure that season. And then when that season's up, put them tools up, so to speak. And here comes the other season, the one you know is going to come. That you saw it last year. Man, pull out those tools and work those tools for that season. It's like clockwork. It comes and it goes, but it's consistent. It's to be expected. Don't fall back. Let me close this short episode with an analogy that I would give the inmates there at the Kyle unit. It was a game that we used to play that I made up when I was a kid called Around the World. My parents got divorced when I was about maybe 9 or 10 years old. And we were in the backyard one day. We have got this swimming pool, this above the ground swimming pool. And me and my siblings are in the back, we're playing, and I come up with this game called Around the World. And I tell my siblings, hey man, let's get around the pool and let's line up against the wall of the pool, put our hands on our shoulders, form like a choo-choo train, and just go around the pool. And we started walking around the wall of the pool and started stirring the water. And we're like, oh, cool. And we're just looking at the water, it's stirring, and we're creating this momentum, right? And on the count of three, I tell them, turn around. 1, 2, 3, boom. We turn around and the water just hits us. The current that we created hits us. And hey, come on, let's go back the other way. And we formed a little choo-choo train, and we start walking in the opposite direction, right? And we start going, and it's tough, and we're going, and we're going. But we create a new current, and we're going. And okay, 1, 2, 3, we turn around, and the current hits us again. I will use that analogy in class with the men at the Kyle unit to illustrate this right here. For all of your life, you aligned yourself against a culture, against a hood, against a family, against an upbringing. And you walked around and you walked around and you created a current. You created a current of habits and a lifestyle and values and a way of living life and responding and reacting to life. And this is all you know. And you've been doing it so long that there's just this momentum that just thrusts you, propels you forward. Like doing the wrong thing is just second nature. Doing bad it just is, because that's all you know. But then when you decide to make a change, you got to turn around. And you got to come against that current that you've created for so many years, and guess what hits you? Everything you've known to be true, you got to fight against it. You got to fight against the current. You got to fight against the attitude, the habits, the addiction, the bad company. Sometimes it's family members. You got to fight against all of that and create a new current. And while it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, know this, that just as with time you created a bad current and the momentum just kind of propelled you forward, you were just doing bad things so easily, same thing is true when you create a new current and you go the other way. It's going to be hard, but the more you go, the more you turn, you're going to create a new current, new momentum, and doing the right thing, being the right person, it's going to be easier because you've got decisions and habits and attitudes and values and beliefs that you've been working on for years that are going to help propel you forward when you're in these seasonal changes, whether you call them dry spells or not. Whatever you're going through, man, keep turning around. Keep pushing that current. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. Don't go back. Don't go back to what's familiar. I remember I used to write on the board there at the unit. I would write the word familiar. Famili something, right? Familiar. I'd write familiar on the board, but then I would tell the inmates, what do you notice that's inside the word familiar? And I would highlight the word liar. Sometimes what's familiar is based on a lie. So when you're creating that new current in your life, folks, remember, Whether it's a season or a transition, when you feel like you just can't do it anymore, keep pushing and resist. Reject the idea that, man, I'm just dry doing this and I need to go back to what's familiar. Because what's familiar is 9 times out of 10 a lie. But you might ask me, hey, how do I know it's a lie? When you go back to a lifestyle that's familiar, that doesn't promote and protect life, that is selfish, where you're violating boundaries and you're engaged in all type of toxic stuff, that type of familiarity is a lie. The Bible says that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But he comes to give us life and life more abundantly. So if you're tempted to revert and go back to what's familiar, and there's all manner of thievery and stealing and killing and destruction, and you're hurting yourself and you're hurting other people, then that type of familiarity is not good. And I would encourage you, I would challenge you to fight against it, folks. Remember, you've been doing this for a long time. You created a current, and now you got to go back. You got to fight against the old current and create a new one. Create a new momentum. And with time, trust me, I'm speaking from experience, with time, the momentum that you create is going to help push you forward when you're in those seasons of doubt. God bless you guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.